This is the most modern, sophisticated, and probably most lethal fighter jet in the world, the American F-35. The decision-making technology that keeps it in the air requires thousands of microchips, each 10,000 times thinner than a human hair. They are the brains of modern electronics, the new oil. This one single company produces over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors found on those fighter jets, but also in iPhones, cars, and satellites. TSMC, located in the north of Taiwan, just 100 miles from China. Under the rule of Xi Jinping, China increasingly threatens Taiwan, and by extension, it poses a threat to the world, because control over Taiwan means control over the technological world. This is a global flashpoint.
It has been a big question frustrating Europe.
If it's a situation where the fighting spills over into like Japan or South Korea, these are allies of the United States.
That could lead to a domino effect of catastrophic events.
Really what we're talking about here is the potential for World War III.
So what's at stake? How did we get here, and what happens next? I will talk with our political experts on China now. And of course, we can only do that because there's a TSMC microchip right inside this MacBook. TSMC, that's the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Jamil, you lived 22 years in China, half of your life. So what's at stake here?
So one of the motivating factors for Chinese invasion of Taiwan would be to capture the very, very high-end microchip and semiconductor industry in Taiwan.
Something Taiwan and its allies want to prevent at all costs.
And they're even now discussing the possibility of self-destruct mechanisms, ways to destroy the industry, at least the very high-end parts of the microchip and semiconductor industry, in the case of an invasion.
And to the US, this is a question of national security. This is the new national security strategy of the Biden administration. And it says right in the beginning here, we recognize the importance of the semiconductor supply chain to our competitiveness and our national security. So confrontation between China and Taiwan would inevitably lead to a confrontation between China and the US and the whole Western world. This here was a preview. Chinese military exercises in August 2022 in response to a visit by high-ranking US politician Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. At least 11 Chinese missiles fell into the sea to the north, south, and east of Taiwan. 5 of them fell in Japan's exclusive economic zone, the first time any missile had landed in those waters. And that's not all. Have a look at the military drill areas during the Taiwan Strait crisis in the mid-90s and compare it with those that happened in 2022. And you clearly see China is getting closer. And it doesn't stop there either. Chinese fighter jets are ramping up pressure with incursions across the median line in the Taiwan Strait and Taiwan's air defense identification zone. This is not happening sporadically, but now daily and sometimes even multiple times a day. Analysts say it's not just provocation, it's a dress rehearsal for an invasion of Taiwan. Now, Philip, you are Politico's China watcher in Washington. How would China instigate an invasion of the island?
You know, a Chinese invasion of Taiwan would no doubt be the most complex and challenging maritime invasion in military history. We're talking about a 100-mile stretch of rough seas that would require the marshaling by the Chinese government of thousands of ships. This would be like a reverse Dunkirk.
And they would most likely start with some sort of shock and awe. They would attempt what they call a decapitation strike. So they would try to take out the president, top ministers, top army officials. They could do that with special forces, with missile attacks. Probably as a very early indicator, they might take some of the smaller islands, Matsu and Kinmen, and these islands that are actually very close to the mainland Chinese shore, but are still Taiwanese territory. So that could be a first step, and then leading to decapitation strike, leading to full-scale invasion.
The Chinese government has invested massive amounts of bandwidth and resources to building its military capacity, and particularly military capacity of a maritime nature.
According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, China's military spending has grown from 25 billion in 1992 to 270 billion in 2021. It has climbed from number 9 to number 2 in the world, and China's naval fleet is even larger now than the US Navy. Harry, you are Politico's correspondent on foreign affairs in Washington. How would the US react to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan?
President Joe Biden has made it clear that he would send U.S. troops to defend Taiwan. But there is a lot of bipartisan support in the United States at the moment for giving Taiwan as many weapons as possible, to the point where it's not an attractive target for China to invade in the first place, a so-called porcupine.
Stuart, you are Politico's EU-China correspondent in Brussels. What could Europe do in case of an invasion?
There has been very little evidence of Europe actually providing any security guarantee to Taiwan. China obviously is the second biggest economy in the world, and that puts Europe in a very difficult position when it comes to sanctioning one of their biggest trading partners.
But wait a minute. How did we get here? This is Mao Zedong, the Chinese communist revolutionary who founded the People's Republic of China in 1949. The leaders of the Nationalist Party, the Kuomintang, who had been in power before, fled to Taiwan. And while Taiwan developed into a democracy, China, which still claims sovereignty over the territory, effectively became a dictatorship. One of Mao's fellow revolutionaries was this man, Xi Jinping. He was later imprisoned and purged several times during the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s. And now it's getting interesting. Xi Jinping was the father of Xi Jinping, the current leader of China. And Xi himself, as part of the family, was sentenced to years of grueling farm labor. So, Jamil, you would think when Xi Jinping took over in 1992, he would modernize the Communist Party and continue to liberalize the country. He even sent his daughter to Harvard University in the United States to study English. But instead, he became a dictator who can now rule for the rest of his life.
In my opinion, a China that wanted a peaceful rise, that wanted to be integrated into the world, existing liberal world order, that's basically gone. Xi Jinping sees capturing Taiwan as his historic mission. It's a holy task that's been passed down to him by his communist forebears.
So what happens next? Two recently published documents give us some insights. One is the new national security strategy of the Biden administration we already saw, and the other one is the new Chinese white paper regarding Taiwan. And here it says, "We will tolerate no foreign interference in Taiwan. We will thwart any attempt to divide our country, and we will combine as a mighty force for national reunification and rejuvenation. The historic goal of reuniting our motherland must be realized and will be realized." What is the answer to that?
Well, the U.S. is taking a multi-pronged approach to trying to mitigate the potential security threat that the Chinese government is posing to the United States and its allies. So first off, it's trying to stunt the China's economic and industrial capacity to create new generation high-tech weaponry through blockages of semiconductor exports.
At the same time, TSMC is bringing its chip production to the United States, building a $40 billion hub in Phoenix, Arizona. The new American CHIPS Act provides over $50 billion for research on next-generation semiconductors. Likewise, the European CHIPS Act provides over 43 billion euros. Exports to China are restricted, and US talent is banned from working in Chinese chip factories. But this comes at a risk.
Now, China feeling throttled, feeling too threatened by such embargoes would perhaps be more tempted to try to snatch Taiwan in order to grab that industry and break through the blockade.
Autocratic leaders like Xi Jinping come to believe sometimes that they have very limited opportunities to take action, and that means that it is quite possible he might make a move in the next few years.
Well, China itself is also aware of the fact that Europe is talking about diversification. So what China is doing, of course, it is also diversifying.
It's a test of patience, wills, and it's a long game.
The next few years are going to be incredibly dangerous.